When I first started getting into 250 ohm level headphones years ago, I did it knowing that I was going to need a headphone amp, and so I just had one from the beginning, which meant I never really messed around with dongles like these initially. And when I first got an iPad Pro, was using that a lot. I at that time already had AirPods, and so just ended up using that a lot of the time. But more recently, especially after I got a Steam Deck this last year, was starting to think in terms of, okay, it's got a headphone jack. You know, what kind of headphones could I possibly run out of the Steam Deck? What would it be able to power? I didn't know going into it, like, I don't know, is it going to be able to handle my 250 ohm headphones? I had gotten out my old Denon AHD 5000s, which are only 32 ohms. They're a lot easier to drive than some of my other high-end headphones, and so I went into that thinking, all right, I'll just try those. And it worked great out of the Steam Deck. But then it got me curious, okay, well, let me try one of these dongles, which, as a sidebar, you can see here that I have used heat shrink to kind of strengthen it up a little bit, because as a lot of people have commented, the dongles are great quality in terms of the audio quality that comes out of these, but they're very weak. They just look like they would break. And I know a lot of people have commented that they've had it for years and it's been fine, but I kept mine bent at an angle so that when it's out the side of the iPad, the weight of the cable pulling down is putting less stress on the joint. But this is a lot more rigid now. It just feels better to me. If you guys are interested, I could do another video just kind of walking through how I did that if you're thinking of doing that for yourself. Anyway, I tried my Denons out of these and was really pleasantly surprised by both how good the audio quality sounded. It was not really a departure from the Sound Blaster G6. Maybe if I'm like super straining, there's a couple ways that it's a little different, but by and large, it's pretty one-to-one, I thought, with it. And volume-wise, I got a pretty good volume level using this with those headphones at only like 30 to 40%, maybe 50% volume if I really wanted it loud. So that got me bold enough to be like, all right, let me pull out my Beyerdynamic DT1770s and plug those in. And pretty surprised there, actually. It takes a little bit more volume, a couple clicks higher, but between, I would say, 40 to 75% volume, depending on how loud I want it, is adequate for those most of the time. And for headphones as high impedance as 250 ohms, to me, not having to go higher than 75%-ish on the volume, that's adequate. And then I was like, well, shoot, you know, then I could run my best headphones out of my iPad without a headphone amp, which when you're laying in bed or just hanging on the couch with your iPad, you don't want to have to attach a whole amp and then have all these cables all over the place. Like I have done at one point a ways back with the FIO Q11 that I had reviewed. The downside of using that out of, say, an iPad, among other things, is first you got the USB-C cable, then you got your headphone cable. It's just a lot of cables. The other thing that it made me realize, and not to beat up on the FIO Q11 here, but when I did the review on this, I had noted that it wasn't as strong as the Sound Blaster G6 that I use at my desk, which it's battery driven, so that was fair. But on my DT1770s and 1990s headphones, I had to often put it between 50 and 75% volume to get good volume out of this. So experiencing that out of this dongle, I'm thinking, well, in a way, you know, no offense, Q11, but what is the point of it? It doesn't actually seem to provide more power than you would be getting out of this, at least in America. As I understand it, this is 1 volt RMS, and it's half that in the UK because they have restrictions on loudness that they allow through the headphones or whatever. So it may not, for UK folks, be enough power. But for us in the US, this seems to provide enough power, at least for those headphones. Now, caveat to that. I understand that the Beyerdynamic DT1770s and 1990s, despite being 250 ohms, they're also 102 decibel sensitivity. That's very sensitive for headphones, which, despite their impedance, makes them a bit easier to drive than perhaps some headphones. So I'm not trying to claim that you could just power any high impedance headphones and no problem out of this. You could still, in some cases, of course, benefit from an amp. But I have been very pleasantly surprised of what you can accomplish with this. And man, just being able to run this out of your iPad or something, even the Lightning equivalent that I've run out of my phone, same deal. I've tested it that way. It has the same power output. I can run all of my heavy impedance headphones pretty well out of that. I just wanted to talk through that a little bit with you guys, because if you're like me, you probably, as you accumulated high impedance headphones, thought, well, the only way this could possibly really work is with an amp. And if you've ever plugged it into certain 3.5 millimeter jacks, you probably have been pretty underwhelmed. But it showed me the quality of the DAC is more important in some ways than how much power you're dealing with, because I suspect in the past when I've plugged it, I had an old iPad Air. It was back when they had the built-in 3.5 millimeter jack, and when I used to plug my high-end headphones into that, it was, yeah, you had to turn the volume up pretty high, but it always seemed like it's less an issue that you're struggling to power them and more that there just wasn't a whole lot of bass and the sound just felt kind of flat. And in retrospect, especially after using this, where that is not the impression I get, it strikes me, yeah, they did a really good job with the DAC that they put in this cable, which is really impressive given that it's only like $10. Enough so, not claiming you can't do better with a very expensive DAC. Of course you can. I can hear audiophiles bristling at the suggestion of that. But what I would say is, this is surprisingly good for $10. It doesn't, when I listen to my higher end headphones that I have, it doesn't make me think, oh man, I'm really not doing these headphones justice. I'm really not hearing them, in a way that makes them worth wearing. It is, and all of these headphones, whether it's the Denons that I put on or the Beyerdynamics that I've had, all of them are a big step up from the AirPods Max or any of my wireless headphones. And I say that to say that to me is the reason to use this off of an iPad or a phone. Is the cord is a little bit of a pain in the butt, but this produces good enough sound quality that you're getting enough out of those high-end headphones. Yeah, it's a step up. It is worth it. I have tried the U-Green equivalent of the Lightning to 3.5 millimeter, and in terms of sound quality output, it's very, very close to these, actually, which is nice. But the area where it falls behind is the microphone quality. For its mic input out of it, it is not nearly as good as the Apple in that regard. However, the U-Green is also, it's made of like cloth threaded cable. It's much more durable. It feels much better built than the Apple one. So if you don't want to have to do any mods like I did with this one and the shrink wrap, the U-Green might make more sense to you, and they're pretty comparable in terms of their volume output as far as I have experienced anyway. Put your comments or questions down there below with dongles of various kinds that you used. I've also seen on Amazon that have an Anchor one and a few other brands of these kinds of dongles. If you've used any of those, I would love to hear what you thought, both in terms of its volume level and its sound quality, especially if, like me, you're using this with higher end headphones. That would be great to hear from. Otherwise, I hope this is helpful, especially if you've been on the fence. If you have some nicer headphones and you've wondered, would one of these dongles do it? Give it a shot. Depending on the specs of your headphones and just how hard they are to drive, if they're somewhat easier high impedance headphones to drive like what I've described, you might be able to get away with this, and you might be pretty pleasantly surprised what you would end up with. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one.